Alright, now I'm going to show the very little amount of weaponry featured in Shadows of Rose. As I said in the introduction, it really only comes down to Rose's power. It pretty much does the same thing against all enemies it could be used against. It freezes them in their tracks, or it deals some sort of energetic blow. It's basically all it does. However, in the final boss fight, she does gain a couple more abilities. She could summon the Megamycete and deal a blow to Miranda with it. So I'll use quick clips from my blind live stream of it, because I don't feel like going through the whole mode again just to demonstrate it. And then I'll feature the final boss battle and all the attacks within. Oh, nice.
It shines in strength, makes you the perfect vessel. Return and yield your strength! So much power! You truly would have been the perfect vessel for my Eva!
I'm not a goddamn vessel. I'm not some stupid copy. I'm me, Rose. And you're done.
And that's the extent of Rose's power, and that's all there is to show from this mode. Alright, now let's head into the Mercenaries additional orders, and check out the weaponry included with the newly added characters. So just for context, all the tests I'm going to conduct in this mode will be conducted on the normal stages, not the hard stages, because that's like Village of Shadows mode for Mercenaries, you could say. So let's keep it normal here. I'll probably alternate between the village and the castle depending on the enemy I decide to test stuff on, but yeah. So we're going to start with Chris Redfield here. Now, something to note before I go in, his actual guns, which are the Dragoon and the USM AI handgun, we're not going to cover here in Mercenaries as we already saw it in both the original weapon review and the third-person perspective. There's nothing different about him just because Chris is wielding them in Mercenaries. Instead, we're specifically going to go over his fists, which are featured here, because they're basically weapons in the Mercenaries, so I'm going to include them in this weapon review. Originally, I was going to leave them out because I highly regard them more as melee than weapons, but the fact is, the Duke can upgrade Chris's fists. With that, I will allow his fists to be regarded as weapons here. So, we're going to start with his left hook, because it's definitely the much weaker of his two fists. Alright, and if I go into the Duke's shop here, in supplies, he has an energized hook. This just increases your onslaught, which is one of Chris's abilities in the Mercenaries. I will try to feature this as well, because it does up his fist power, as well as his weapon power. If you go into Gunsmithy, here you can see, you can actually upgrade his left hook. So his base firepower for his left hook is 150, and you could upgrade it all the way to 375. So the weapons in the Mercenaries I will review just like my original weapon review, first with no upgrades whatsoever, and then with full upgrades. So you saw the left hook, now let's go into the field and test them on enemies. So the left hook is going to be pretty weak. I'm going to test it on more Ica since that's the weakest enemy. Okay, so you can land a headshot with the hook to up the damage a little bit. While its base firepower is 150, you could score 225 if you land the head. Now I'm going to test it with no upgrades, but with Onslaught activated. Should change it dramatically. Alright, so with Onslaught activated, the base damage of the left hook is 375. And if you land a headshot, scored up to 562. So there's the left hook, no upgrades, both with and without Onslaught. Now let's test it fully upgraded with and without Onslaught. So 375 base damage with full upgrades, and 562 when you land a headshot. So with Onslaught, 937 base damage, up to 1406 damage points. So yeah, your hook becomes pretty powerful when you have Onslaught activated and it's fully upgraded. Alright, that's gonna do it for Chris's hook. So now let's see the weapon prowess of Chris's straight punch. This is far more powerful than the left hook, I will add here. We check the statistics here. Starts with a base power of 400, and you could upgrade it up to 670. And of course, just like the hook, there's also the energized punch, which will increase the onslaught gauge. So let's test out his straight punch in the field, first with no upgrades. I'm gonna go ahead and fend up against a lichen for this one. Headshot. Alright, so it appears that unlike the hook, the straight punch does the same damage across the board. So yes, 400 base damage, but with Onslaught activated, you up it to 1,000. Alright, now let's test the straight punch with full upgrades. Okay, so 670 base damage and up to 1,675 with Onslaught activated. This is with the straight punch fully upgraded, so I'm telling you, and from my own personal experience, at least in the regular stages, for most of them anyway, you can get away with just Chris's fists. You don't even need your guns. Now, that's going to be it for Chris. He does have a stomp melee move, but because that can't be upgraded unlike his fists, I'm not going to include that in the weapon review. You will see that in the upcoming DLC exclusive Melee showcase, on the other hand, so look forward to that. But otherwise, that's it for Chris Redfield. Alright, time to check out Karl Heisenberg's weaponry. We're going to start with his projectiles, specifically the scrap. So you could read the description down there. Yep, he just gathers scrap and launches the projectiles. If I activate his magnetic field, so of course, I could upgrade his scrap, not only its power, but the amount of projectiles as well. So this is going to be interesting when we upgrade it. But first, let's go in with no upgrades and see what we can make of enemies. Alright, so the projectiles, they are much harder to keep track of like individual damage points. So I just wanted to give you guys like a brief overview of what they are about. Now let me fully upgrade them and see just how much more powerful they are. I should provide emphasis on that bottom text right there. The maximum number of projectiles is doubled when the magnetic field is active. Alright, so I went ahead and upgraded the projectiles. Now I can project up to 6 of them. I actually had to play one stage in order to afford all of that. So now let's see it. As you can see, I have more, like, stages of it. Even an armored Lycan doesn't stand a chance when you fully charge it like that. Alright, I think that'll do for the scrap. Alright, now for the next projectile, the Sawblade. The specialty of this one is it can slice through enemies and hit multiple. So it has, like, piercing ability, obviously. And the longer you hold it, the faster it spins. And here are the statistics for you. So I could up the power as well as the charge rate. What that means is I could charge it up to full power faster. All right, so let's take this out into the field and test it on some enemies. 270 to 405. 405 to 607 at level 2, or at the second charge rate. 675 to 1012 if you fully charge it. 2 enemies just like that. It's got a very long range, of course. Wow, that was a nice shot. Alright, so now let's check out the Sawblade with full upgrades. See how much faster it charges now? It does some major damage now. Wow. Wow, the magnetic field really ups it even more. Alright, well, that's gonna do it for the Sawblade. As you can see, I'm not being super detailed with these because it's like in a mini game and there's many different ways to test it out. It's just a broad overview, if anything. Alright, so before I proceed to the last thing to show, the fact is he could also wield flash grenades and use them as projectiles, like so. But it operates the same exact way as the flash grenade used normally. He just has way longer range with it, basically. Alright, so I just wanted to briefly show that. Now we're gonna look at his Soldat Jet. It does quite a bit of destruction, and that's why there's actually a cooldown between summons. And the Soldat isn't upgradable. However, there is this little thing, SOS. It reduces the cooldown time. So let's just see the power of that. Alright, it is ready to go. So let's test it on an armored Lycan.
Let's try this!
Damn! Does 3,000 damage. And you can see on the bottom right there how long it'll take to charge after the fact. So I suggest getting that upgrade if you plan on using this thing a lot. Which, it's really best kept reserved until boss-type enemies or more powerful ones like that. Alright, so that's all there is to show for the Soldat. Although I'm looking at the icon on the bottom right, and it appears to have changed into the Sturm. So let me make sure that's what spawns. Alright, here we go.
Mess him up!
Oh, wow. Holy shit. That dealt 10,000 damage to all surrounding enemies once it was done. So yeah, it didn't even mention, not only can you summon the Soldat Jet, but you could also summon a Sturm as well. Very interesting. Alright, well, that's gonna be it for the summoning of such. Now for Heisenberg's last weapon, his main weapon, the hammer. So there's 2 ways you could use this. You could either swing it, or you could slam it. Now, swinging it is recommended to start with because when you hit enemies with the swing, you charge it up, and you could make the slam much more powerful. If you read all of those descriptions right there, you'll see why. And of course, the initial power of the hammer could also be upgraded. Has a base power of 240, you can put it all the way up to 440. And the electric charge rate could also be upped. This is, I believe, the electric charge that you gain from using it regularly. Alright, so let's test it out in the field. Now let's try the electric charge. Much more powerful with the charge. All right, now let's try the slam. Right now it's like fully charged though. Still does a pretty good amount of damage. Alrighty. So that's the hammer, and that's with no upgrades. It's already kind of a beast. Now let's see what it's like fully upgraded. I should mention in the supplies, you could also get the speedy swing. And there's also Iron Will, which applies to both the hammer and projectiles by not flinching when hit by an enemy, while slamming the hammer or charging projectiles. But I can only afford this one right now, along with fully upgrading the hammer. And I already had to play one round, so we're in the second round right now, and the thing's already fully charged. So just like that, I took out 2 armored Lycan. And also, I just found out right there, you can kill a Lycan with the slam as long as it has some electric charge, even if they're on a different level. Well, I think that's going to do it for the hammer, as well as Heisenberg's weaponry. Alright, now for the last character of Mercenaries, Alcina Dimitrescu. And she's got a bit up her gigantic sleeve. So, her overall ability is the Thrill, which increases as you defeat enemies. This will definitely come into play later. She could slice with her nails. She could slam enemies. With this, I'm not going to include because this is pure melee. Could summon flies as well. Yeah, she's got a lot. So I'll go over one at a time. We're going to start with her flies because that's like the most simplistic of her weaponry. Just simply summon flies and they attack enemies that you aim at. The number of summonable swarms varies depending on the current level of thrill. So of course her insect swarm is upgradable both in power and throw value. Base power of 100. You can get it up to 300. I'll test out right here. And it recharges itself. Now, I should mention the lady's lipstick. That will up your thrill factor just like that. See? So a single swarm can defeat a single enemy. And that's about it. So now let's check out the flies when they're fully upgraded.
Choose an ability.
So yeah, a swarm is gonna instantly down enemies at that level. Regular enemies. And it appears a swarm will only go for one enemy at a time. Yep. So when the swarm is fully upgraded, it's probably best to save it for more powerful enemies. Well, that's gonna do it for the swarm. Alright, so let's check out Lady Dimitrescu's slicing abilities. She could do a lot with slicing. And with the bumpers, at least on a controller, you can perform a right-handed slice, a left-handed slice, or you could do them both at the same time. It also changes if you move backward while performing one of the slices. So, plenty of opportunities, and she also has a cleaving slice, which is like a rush attack. So I'm going to show all of these attacks, and on top of that, you could also upgrade them. the lady's nails specifically. So the base power is 200, and you could up it to 350. You could also increase the throw value of these as well. So let's test out all the attacks right here first. Here's her right attack. And let's see the directional button added to that. So it's like an upward slice. Left attack. Ooh. It's like an impale. It really reminds me of Freddy Krueger's glove. And you could alternate, of course. And here's the double attack. And here's her cleaving slice. Alright, so let's test all of these out.
What next? Ha ha ha! Yes!
Alright, so yeah, quite a variety of attacks. Now let's test it all out with full upgrades.
Let's have some fun!
Alright, so definitely should mention, I think it also says in the description, the longer you charge the cleaving slice, the more damage it does. And I was proving it in that test right there. Close range cleaving slices didn't do nearly as much as far range ones. So something to keep in mind when you do that slice. But yeah, with her nails fully upgraded, you can deal some major damage. It's also worth mentioning there are abilities you can gain from those blue orbs that further increase the damage of those things among her other abilities, and that goes for Chris and Heisenberg. I failed to mention that. I'm gonna mention all of the abilities at the end of the Mercenaries review. Well, that's it for Dimitrescu's nails. Now we're gonna check out Dimitrescu's ability to throw vanities. Ornate vanities can be thrown when the throw gauge is mostly full. So you throw one, and you can barrel down multiple enemies at once, and of course there is a cooldown after using it. And this can also be upgraded from the Duke. So its base power is 3,000. You could up it to 5,000. You could also increase the throw value, and you could decrease the cooldown time. So that's pretty nice. And it's also worth mentioning, there's also this supply, Vigorous Vanity. If you manage to hit 3 or more enemies when using it, the cooldown time is greatly reduced. So all this considered, first let's test it out with no upgrades. There's not going to be much of a difference between no upgrades and full upgrades.
Let's have some fun!
Alright, let's go. There you go. Alright, so that's with no upgrades. Let's test it out with full upgrades. Okay, I think that's enough demonstrating the Ornate Vanity. I actually had to go into the third stage to really show a good demonstration of it. But yeah, you can plow through a whole group of enemies with this thing, and it'll destroy a lot of them. Only boss-type enemies may withstand the initial blow. Alright, so that's it for the Ornate Vanity. Now for the last thing I'll show from Dimitrescu, her daughters. So Dimitrescu can summon her daughters when the thrill gauge is completely full. And all they will do is automatically attack enemies. So good for groups and probably really good for maintaining your combo while you move on to the next area. That's what I use it for anyway. Now the daughters can't be upgraded through the gunsmithy menu. In fact, the only thing that improves the daughters' performance is in-game abilities that you earn through the blue orbs.
Daniela, after them!
And that's that. Now, of course, you can summon any three of them. I don't think they do anything different between each other. Just basic attacks is all.
Cassette, do away.
Alright, so there's an example of the daughters for you. That's going to conclude all of Dimitrescu's weaponry, and that's it for all of the Mercenaries' weapons. Now, before I conclude this entire weapon review, I'm just going to briefly go over all of the rewards you get that are specific to each character. These typically affect, like, some of their weaponry. So with Ethan, which I didn't show at all, but it's worth mentioning maybe, Magic Magazine, which doubles your ammo, Execution, which increases your attack power when enemy's HP is below 30%, Lightning Speed, which, as it sounds, movement speed greatly increases, but as a drawback, the damage taken increases. And finally, Mass Immune. Your knife attacks are 10 times stronger, but damage from other weapons greatly decreases, so basically you become a knife lord with this one. As for Chris, you can unlock Auto Onslaught, which increases the onslaught gauge automatically, only effective in combat areas. Follow-up Shot, which after you attack with a left hook, the next shot from a gun does more damage. And a headshot will also increase the onslaught gauge. The Headshot Boost, which the onslaught gauge increases greatly when an enemy is killed with a headshot while onslaught is active. And finally, Finishing Reload, which defeating an enemy with a straight punch instantly reloads your equipped gun. Now with Heisenberg, you could unlock the Razor Ricochet, which Sawblades will ricochet when fired. That becomes really helpful in my own experience. Electrostatic Shuffle, which increases movement speed. Charging Slam, which the hammer's electric charge increases greatly if 3 or more enemies are hit at the same time with a slam. And finally, Electromagnetic Boost, which increases the charging speed of projectiles when the magnetic field is active. And finally, Dimitrescu, you can unlock Entomophobia, which I guess that's the fear of bugs in real life, but it causes more damage to enemies who are swarmed by flies. Then you got Thrilling Quick Step, which increases speed and increases further when the thrill gauge is full. And Blood Sacrifice, where the cooldown time for summoning a daughter decreases slightly every time an enemy is defeated. And finally, Dicing Demise, which increases the damage dealt by two-handed slice attacks greatly when the enemy has 50% or less health remaining. There's also an ability called Lady Scissorhands, which simply increases the damage dealt by slicing. That's a regular ability that you don't have to unlock per reward. And yeah, you saw the conditions as I went over all of those. Alright, so that's going to be it for Mercenaries weapons. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes my DLC exclusive weapon review of Resident Evil Village. I hope you enjoyed the video, and of course I will follow up with a melee move showcase featuring the same DLC exclusivity. So look forward to that. This is Shankster94, aka The Gamer Shankster. Rate, comment, subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Shankster_94. Check out my Facebook page and support me on Patreon. Shout out to Feargal the Fearless for being an active patron, and shout out to these individuals for supporting me in the past. Don't forget to check out my Discord server, Shankster's Hub. It's a great place for you guys to communicate with each other about Resident Evil and any other sort of mutual subject. Alrighty, well, peace out. I'll see you guys on the melee move video.